Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate that. In today's video, we're going to talk about the importance of location. When you hear real estate agents, what do they always say? Location, location, location. Send me your location, let's help, or it can hinder your career depending on the people you're around, the place that you're in, and the amount of money that it costs. So what I'm gonna do is break down for you in two different categories, helping and hindering, breaking these bad boys down on why the place you choose could be the single determining factor of your success. If you want to see whether it's helping, whether it's hindering, you can check that out in the timestamps below. I'll have everything linked up. Without further ado, let's jump into it. When we're talking about location here, I'm also talking about the scene. This is the people included. This is LA if you're trying to be famous. This is DC, you're trying to get politics. This is New York if you want to get a finance. The people that are in this place that create the culture of the place are equally as important as the place itself. And those places, because they are important no matter where it is in the world, whatever it is you want to do, often come with a price tag. And so for me, what I want to talk to you about here today is whether that price tag is worth paying in the first place. Depending on what you're doing, I think it is. Here is where the location and the scene may come in helpful. The best example that I can think about is obviously if you think about you want to be an actor or something, if you go to LA and you have the happenstance of bumping into people who are in the scene doing things that you want to do. For myself, when I wanted to start an online business, I was living in Philadelphia. Not many people had online businesses at the time. So what did I do? I bought a one-way ticket to Chiang Mai, Thailand, because that's where people were building online businesses. Simply from being out there in Chiang Mai, I was able to take people to dinner. I was able to take people to lunch, for coffee, whatever, pick people's brains, see what people are doing, just to encounter people that were doing what I wanted to do. So often when we think about what we want to do and the importance of network, we miss out on the idea that so much of this networking doesn't happen at like official shaking hand events. It's in little conversations that happen in happenstance interactions at coffee shops, at parties. That's why the whole LA schmoozing thing is a real thing. But often for those, you have to pay a price tag. For me, when I went to Thailand, because leveraging location arbitrage, I'm lucky to be American, our passport, our dollar, all of that, I was able to cut my working hours from 40 to 4. So think about that. If you're thinking about wherever scene you're in to get those chance encounters, how much is it worth that price tag? Because I wanted to do music, build an online business, I was able to cut all that working time, those other 36 hours of the week. I immediately got back just from changing my location, and then I was able to funnel that all into making music, into taking people out, into learning about online business. And I swear I made 6 years of progress that I made before in maybe 1.5 or 2. I was very clear. My beat making went through the roof. The music I was able to make skyrocketed just because of the amount of time I was able to invest. Rather than getting 1 or 2 hours at the end of my working day every day, I was able to invest full days, 4, 5, 6 days a week just into making music. So thinking about the scene or the people that are there, is it worth paying that price tag? Sometimes it is. A lot of times opportunities that come to people just because they're in a place. They happen to stumble on something. It's a friend of a friend that told them about somebody, and you walk in, that's what happens. Matthew McConaughey, I think, got his first role because he was in a bar with a producer and he was just handsome and gregarious and got cast as an extra and then showed up, and then I think somebody wasn't there so he was able to land another role. It is what it is. It's like this long chain of events that kind of happens from these small little interactions that you get that you don't always have if you aren't in quote unquote the scene. So I think this idea of opportunities, depending on how important that scene is for you, is very real. I don't want to downplay that. The opportunities can exist for you in small random interactions in these certain places. The third point that I want to make about why it's important to maybe go to a scene is the community. And like I said before, this isn't just like-minded people that you can learn from, that you can jam with. This is people who think like you, who have the same interests as you, that have the same priorities in terms of career and success and what all those things look like. As soon as I moved to Chiang Mai, it was very clear that I was with the right people. Nomads for me had a lot in common. They liked adventure, they liked to travel, they were interested in online business and personal development, and I didn't encounter that in the arts scene that I was in Philadelphia at the time. And so for me, being able to find that community at the time was incredibly important. So one, not only was I able to bring the price tag of my cost of living way down, but two, I was able to learn from the people. Three, I was able to find like-minded people. And so it depends. If you're just starting out in your career, that's a very different place than if you're maybe established, have an actual invested time in your career where maybe you don't need the community. If community is very important to you, that's a time and place that I think scene is worth potentially paying for. Okay, so we talked about how does the scene help you. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how does the scene being in a location hinder you. And this kind of goes with the community piece. Yes, you're in a community, you're with like-minded individuals, but your scene, what you believe, your world is only as big as your bubble. And I learned this a lot from working just a tiny bit in show business in LA. When your world is only as big as your bubble, it's really difficult to not compare yourself to other people. This is where oftentimes you hear celebrities talking about keeping up with the Joneses. Maybe you land a big role, but it's not as big as the role that she got. Maybe you get an award, it's not as big as the one that they got. And that's where the problem comes in of always self-comparing. And because you're in the scene, you're very aware what everyone else is doing. It's expected of you to show up at the party. It's expected of you to come here and do this. Everybody else is. If you aren't, you feel like you're missing out. And to me, that's a really important piece of kind of getting out of the scene, is that it allows me to just be as freely weird and creative as I want to be. I'm not watching what other people are doing, as long as I'm not on Instagram. And so I got to really go off on my own and experiment and express myself in a way where I didn't feel like I had to be doing anything specifically, because I wasn't influenced by anybody else's music, anybody else's art, other than when I intentionally sought it out. The last point I want to make about switching up your scene is possibly being a big fish in a small pond. Whereas if you're going to the scene, there's something you want to do, that means there's probably people there that are already doing it and better than you. Now, if you're doing something like an online business, like I was talking about, that to me is a less kind of competitive space than maybe an art scene or finance and politics, where it does seem to be a little bit more kind of winner take all in a lot of ways, where if this person gets a role, that means you don't get it. And to me, that can be really frustrating, because you might be going up against the best of the best. Now, if you're in a scene that doesn't have as much of that same community, maybe of what you thought you wanted to do or what you're looking for, you might be able to be the one who creates the scene, and then you get to be the connector. You get to be the big fish in a small pond. Because I was a musician, but I was in the digital nomad kind of space, very few other people were doing it. That meant I got a lot of recognition for the work that I was doing. People were excited to meet me and hear the music. I got so many opportunities. They weren't exactly like playing Madison Square Garden. I was invited to music festivals. People asked me to create songs and music for their podcast, these other different things, because what I was doing seemed interesting. If you're in LA and you toss a rock, it's going to come down on 50 influencers and 100 screenwriters and 300 rappers, right? You're a dime a dozen, you're replaceable. If you go to a place where there is no necessarily big scene of what you want to do, you can create it, you can kind of be the connector, and then you get to be known as the big man or woman on campus, as it's known, because you're the one who created it. And everyone wants to be friends with the person who is the connector, the one who's actually creating the opportunities. So there's a real gem there for you, thinking about maybe you want to do something that's a little bit, that isn't so off the beaten path, but how can you do it somewhere where the scene hasn't developed yet, and kind of be one of the movers and shakers in that scene if you're kind of one of the first movers there, as it were. So it's kind of blue ocean strategy a little bit, if you know about that, if you know what that is. This is kind of me piggybacking off of that idea, thinking about location. I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are curious about going to a new place, check out these ideas. How much is the price tag worth? Do you want to have friends? Are you down to sleep on a couch? If you're not, might not be worth it. Speaking from experience, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in, as always, and I'll check you on the next one. Smash all the buttons below. Appreciate y'all. Peace.